So those are our formal presentations, people that travel all over the state and, talk to different groups. So this is kind of question answer. Gentlemen, I really, because we haven't had the opportunity to talk to someone in your profession, your side, maybe John, but I'd be real interested in what your response or what you have to say or your observations or.
As far as, bringing in local jobs and stuff like that, I know we do put a lot of guys to work on work like this, and it's something, like I said, my local union doesn't handle the pipeline agreements and stuff like that for the state of Wisconsin. I wrote down your email address. I'd love to get you some info with some numbers on maybe, for what we did put to work. And it's not just, maybe that company's out of Minnesota, but they work with us, for when it comes, when we need guys that can do these welds, that can be certified for it, for the X-ray welding and stuff like that. They call us up and, Tim's a great example. He has a lot of certs where if they need a certain guy with a certain certification, they're going to call down to us and they're going to say, hey, we've got these guys here, that can go out for you right now, or the job's going to be slowing up in a little bit, we'll have some welders coming. And that's something that they will do, they'll bring in some of their own, sometimes out-of-town companies will, but we try to limit that and work together where a lot of these projects, get our people on the job. And that's what we fight for, every day, you guys work, that's what we do. We want to keep people working.
Do you have workers on the Delavan pumping station?
I'm honestly not sure.
Okay.
I don't know what, what company, if they're subcontracting it out. We do have 601. Yeah, 601 will definitely have those.
601 is out in Milwaukee. They hire mostly guys from the area.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, there are travelers from throughout the United States that come there. Generally, there are people from Wisconsin that are going to be working.
We're going to be out there tomorrow.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, they might be just third-party workers who are working for the Minnesota company that was hired by Enbridge.
Correct.
Exactly.
Because
Yeah.
they'll call in for local welders, local pipelines, not just us. You're looking at laborers, you're looking at operators.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the construction trades will be on a site like that. It just won't be one, local union. And to go further, before, coming out of 2008 and stuff was really, really bad for us in the trades. There was a lot of big work going down at the refineries down south side Chicago, northern Indiana, some big work down there. And we had no work up here, and it's an example that we kind of share with all our work where we bust guys down, tons of them down there to get down there and weld and stuff like that. So it is something where you're always going to see some guys come from out of the area, but the majority of welders and stuff like that, we try to keep our guys on those jobs. So, and it is something, like I said, I'd love to get you some numbers from 601 and get you those.
I have to apologize to you. I went deaf in my right ear last night. Of course, I think I just got impacted earwax, but I can't hear anything.
Oh, that's okay.
So, anyway, I'll have to get your contact information.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can talk to you.
But it's good to know because a lot of us here are, buy local, hire local, and we want to make sure that we've had a lot of claims from Enbridge which are quite frankly not true. If the one thing that's true is that there's some local jobs and some local employment, that's the one I want to hear about.
And I
That's
guarantee you, as soon as work fires up like this, and we've got guys chomping at the bit to get on to work. You heard it before with the one guy making there's a lot of money in pipelining for guys that are in the construction trades.
Money. Yeah.
And guys, like I said, they chomp at the bit to get on that work.
But you do have to be very talented to
Yeah, we don't just
get on
send
that
anybody
pipeline.
out.
They are
Oh,
very,
okay.
the best of the best pipe welders. And they do x-ray. We're told, be prepared to have all the welds x-rayed. So your weld that you're working on, just assume that it's going to be x-rayed. And if you don't pass, you're probably going to be doing a repair, and they're going to, that'll be a strike against you. And then a couple of those, and you're gone. And you have to go back to the local and practice.
For this kind of welding, this kind of connection, is this a male or female connection, or is it a bevel edge?
It's a bevel edge.
Double.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's called a butt weld.
A butt weld,
Yeah.
right.
In which it's typically been the same practice for a long time in the pipeline industry. Obviously things are getting better with the way pipes made, materials made, and the guys out in the field using just better equipment now, you know.
What makes me very confused is that we're really talking about 1960-ish installation originally. So we're asking a very old horse to carry more than twice the load on a butt weld. Nothing against the certified welding techniques, but after 50 years, with the kind of terrain that we have that is part of the kettle moraine, aggregate base, which is heaving and shifting all the time. We saw a great example, not right here, but in California by University of California, where they had a 60-foot high spout of a water line that split in half out there that was old. We have a lot of infrastructure problems.
Absolutely.
We mostly hear about it, see about it with the water and sewer lines in the municipalities. But this to me is the potential for a much more aggravated
Some of the
situation.
stuff with butt welding, I'm honestly not a welder, I'm a plumber actually, but, you know, I represent and work with a lot of welders, great welders at that. But for what I've learned from welding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the welding material that the weld you're doing is typically stronger than the pipe itself. And I think you could probably test for that too. And it could be something to do with the way, you know, the pipe is bedded, you know, or something like that, that's why I have a hard time believing that welds fail, you know, because usually for what I see when these guys do this stuff, it's in there and it's never going. There was talks, or remember hearing a story at Miller Park when Big Blue went down, that there was, I think it was a friend of ours that ran, it was a 4 or 6 inch gas line through there. And that crane went all the way down, bent the pipe, ripped the hangers out, and everything. Not one of those welds busted. I couldn't tell you the weight of the crane coming down, but that makes me believe that the welds are good, you know, that they're putting in.
But PHMSA, I think, has said that, you know, these are weld failures.
Well,
Somebody has said that.
they are, but the idea is that the failures that have occurred, for the most part, are actually manufacturing failures. We're not talking about the butt welded ends, we're talking about seams.
Yeah.
We're talking about automated welding techniques for pipe manufacturing. It's a whole different thing than what we do.
Different thing, that's correct.
So I'm speaking in some regards against Enbridge and all of this, but I've got to defend my own trade here. Well, I'm dead serious here, and what we're talking about are two very different things. There have been butt weld failures, and there will be. People are human, and there's no question about that. But the majority of the problems that have occurred have either been through manufacturing processes or improper pipe layment. Where one case in particular that comes to mind, if you're on the internet at all, get onto YouTube and Google Enbridge Pipeline 5. Number 5 pipeline goes across from Superior and actually crosses the Mackinac Strait at the bridge. And it's an underwater ferry story. The pipe was laid back in the 50s, that particular pipe was, and it goes across hills and valleys. There's no support. This is the sort of thing that I'm talking about when I talk badly about Enbridge. What was that the rigor back in the 50s? I can't tell you. I know that a UA fitter would never consider doing a situation like that and having his name put onto that.
Well, to be honest, too, and the pipeline back then was probably owned by Bechtel before Enbridge owned it. Wouldn't you think?
Well, it was Lakehead back then,
Yeah.
and the name has changed, but the situation is the same.
Yeah, the pipe's still
But
pipe.
make no mistake about it, as far as the craftsmanship of the trades in this thing, it's peerless. It has a lot to do with the administration that's putting the pipe in the ground.
Well, how did that Kalamazoo pipe right behind you, how did that split like that? Was that due to the manufacturer of the?
I'm not sure if that's one of those pieces that's been, the same sort of a thing, but this sort of pipe isn't seamless. And you have a seam weld.
Yeah.
And from what I've seen with that, it's a burst on a seam.
Okay, all right.
And that's what's manufactured down in Louisiana?
Well, this batch that is alluded to here in Wisconsin is, I'm not sure about the Kalamazoo, and I don't want to talk about that because I don't know.
So not commenting on your training
Yeah,
or
no,
credentialing.
absolutely. That's why
I think
wanted
that
to
the
come.
concern was
That's
more
a good
kind of that
distinction.
Yeah.
faulty manufacturing,
Oh, yeah.
so.
And we see it in our trade, not just in the ground, but up in the air with steam lines, and, I mean, there's all sorts of piping that we deal with, whether it's copper, stainless, but there's always different parts, and like he said, there's human error, there's always gonna be human error in anything you can do, but I pride myself on saying I'm plumbing with the plumbers and steam fitters because of what these guys do, because steam fitters do every day in and day out, for what they work with.
But there still have been 800 failures. Now, that's a big category. It's not just weld failures, it's failures of some kind. So,
Spills of some kind.
there's still the risk there, and what we're arguing about is whether they are welds or seams or bad manufacturing or age. What is the effect of age on pipe? Or was the gentleman that talked about water?
It's all the conditions, and it could be, there's so many different variables that
Yeah.
you can't, a manufacturer's gonna tell you it's gonna last this long, but, if it's not used properly to manufacture specs or something like that, that throws everything out there.
I'll just throw this in. I worked on pipe, the water pipe, and they had a 10-foot inside diameter, and they were guaranteed for 100 years. Well, if you think about that for very long, it's ridiculous. Who's going to be around in 100 years to check on who made them, or the company that made them, or anything else?
Thank you. Taking care of Supervisor Weber here.
But you're absolutely right. But there's all of this work to produce the commodities that are put in the ground and all the effort to do the actual construction work is done with a lot of engineering background. So you do the best you can with what you have. But I'm in the metal business, and I can tell you that the metal that's put on the floor today is different from the metal 50 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
The quality standards are different. The only exception to that might be, and it's a might, it's not an absolute, is what country did the metal come from? If you brought some import stuff in that was low grade, and it was, I think most of what you're talking about is 1-inch thick pipe, or 1-inch thick plate that's rolled pipe.
I don't know the size. It was
When I
just
was
huge.
15, I worked for Chicago Steel Tank, and I was that intelligent, educated kid on the inside with a cone grinder, grinding the overlaps of the weld seams on the inside of the pipes in the summertime at 120 degrees. I learned some lessons. But most of this stuff, fellas, isn't it right, it's a 1-inch material?
It all depends on the size for the thickness. I mean, it can go from anywhere from,
Well, if
You
you
know,
get a 6-foot or bigger, I'm pretty sure that.
61 is a 42-inch diameter, and it's 3/8.
3/8?
Yes.
Well, it's
They're about-
it's probably half.
Well, it
That's
varies
five-
between 3/8 and half.
0.55
is what,
is the standard.
Okay.
Point
I
on the
stand
pipeline.
corrected.
So that's a little over half-inch thick. Half-inch wall is not that much. No. I mean, I have a natural gas easement that goes right through my land, and, which is close to my house. And there's a 10-inch and a 12-inch pipe, and they were put in there in the 50s. And I was initially told that the pressure was around 300 PSI. I found out last year that it's over 700. You know,
So it's
that they're-
huge.
And a leak could cause an explosion and take out a half a mile, you know, of homes. You know, you know, they're not going to do, they're going to do as little as possible to save money. Right? I mean, I know that they check the wall thickness often in those pipes, you know, in case it starts getting worn out. That's why we do sleeving. That's what you're talking about, putting another casing on the outside of the pipe. That's called sleeving. And, you know, they sometimes do that when the wall thickness starts getting worn down. But I'm concerned about that pipeline. I understand everybody's concern here. You know, and it's not just for environmental, but safety.
Yeah.
We have concerns too, because we don't know what that diluent is. You know, we know there's benzene in it. We have reason to believe there's benzene in it. But for our first responders, you know, so there's a rupture, there's a blow up, there's an explosion.
Yeah.
And
You would think they would have to comply with MSDS.
You would think.
well, you'd have to be honest too about what was in there. And
Yeah.
that's kind of, we're concerned about that. So there's lots and lots and lots of concerns, but concern about my friends that are first responders and, you know, emergency management teams and people in the area and animals and wells, wildlife, pets, cattle, aquifer, yeah. So that's why we're here, kind of like, whoa, what can we learn? Yeah,
What's that?
oh, I'm sorry. Well, Mary and then,
Me? Okay.
please.
Well, you know, I keep thinking about what Bruce had said, and I remember at the last meeting, I think there was a nurse or somebody talked about risks.
Yes.
Right?
This is right.
How you have to, you know, balance risks in your life. And, you know, certainly none of us want to give up our vehicles. We're going to drive, right? We're going to need, you know, fuel. But tell me, you know, when you talk about increasing, you know, the usage for this pipeline, where's the product going? It's going to Louisiana, and then where is it going after that? Is it going to benefit us here in this country? Do we know?
Don't most of them go to, I thought some go to refineries down in the Midwest Chicago area, because they split down there, don't they?
It splits, and
I don't know 100%, so I don't want
at this point, Enbridge hasn't been very cooperative in regard to divulging exactly what's in what line at one time, and it does change from time to time. They send batches, and the big thing is that the lines, that the 42-inch line that is known as line 61, one of the newest line that was put in 2007 and 8, does end up in Flanagan, and from Flanagan, Illinois, that is. And from there, they have lines that go west and south, and eventually down to Louisiana. So the tar sand product doesn't end up in Chicago or the refineries in northern Indiana, for that matter. That stuff is apparently headed for, indirectly, but still headed for Louisiana. And there again, people
The
don't
production
tell
is so high up there, and that they just, you know, they can't wait. They gotta pump it through. It starts up here in Alberta, Canada, off the map, goes through the corner of North Dakota, across Minnesota. This is us, and then it goes Illinois, Missouri, Kansas, down to Cushing, Oklahoma, which is a big oil center. And then it goes on this Seaway pipeline down to Freeport, Texas, and Port Arthur. So, and those are big ports. They're heading for points away from the U.S. So,
So it's not getting refined here in the States?
No.
no.
Not that we know of.
I mean, why? They could, but what we're thinking is that the Keystone XL, which was going, which is proposed to go through Nebraska, it's tar sands,
Right.
and it is just coming down like this.
It's a shortcut.
And we think one of the possibilities is that since the new capacity is higher here than it was in Keystone XL, they may be counting on the possibility that they're not going to get the Keystone XL in. And so they're going to be delivering, tar sands direct. And, but at some point in time, I guess to be fair, is that the other pipeline has diluent in it in Wisconsin. That's the stuff that allows the tar to come through the pipe. It flows back. It flows north to Superior. So if it's separated, it must have been refined. And where it's being refined and how much is being refined, you see, we don't know that. I keep telling, well, I won't keep telling, but I think that if Enbridge says something, we've got to say, show me your engineering drawing, show me the flow rate, show me the data that you have, and send it to the county engineers. And let them check it out if that's what you're claiming. But they're so closed. They claim all these companies say it's proprietary. That they don't want someone else to steal their whatever. What?
They don't want Charlene Staples on their back.
That's right. So anyway, excuse me for jumping in there again.
Yeah. These are so interesting because every time we do this, some different people come and we get a different prism of it, which is very good. Other questions or comments, or Mr.
Well,
Goodman?
just two questions and perhaps a comment, but one of the things was brought up that Enbridge now says they do 100% inspections, but somebody said that's only since 2012. So when they put pipeline 61 in 2007, were 100% of the wells checked then, or was it?
I can't tell you, I can't answer yes or no. I don't believe that they were 100%. But maybe one of my younger brothers did
Told they were
tell
100%
experience on that, but
Oh, okay, no, they're saying inspections.
Well, or I don't know what the term
a
is.
visual inspection is
Does
not
that
the same
mean
as
X-ray?
an
That's not the same as an X-ray.
I'm not sure now you mentioned what the
No.
term
To
is.
talk about a pipeline
visual
or
inspection,
welding inspections
how long
and
does that
tell
take?
these
That
people
takes
how they
A
work.
minute, 2 minutes versus an X-ray. Which takes,
How long?
I don't even know for sure. I would say at least a couple hours, well, a few hours.
Okay.
Yeah, to set up the machine to.
How long
do
are the
the
sections
X-ray.
of pipe?
I think they're 40, 40,
Yeah,
41,
yeah,
40.
the range from
So
40.
it's gonna get dug up all the way from Superior down here? The whole thing's gotta get dug up?
No,
No,
nothing's getting done
X-ray.
except for that stuff.
What,
Not to X-ray.
That they stick up. That's the pig.
what PIMSA required Enbridge to do was to identify possible locations for pipe that were improperly manufactured and to dig up a number of those. And they accomplished by statistical analysis
They were not 100% inspected.
the likelihood of more leaks occurring after inspecting a percentage of the
And in fact,
pieces that were identified. When pipe are manufactured, they're stamped, as my welding brother will testify.
Sure.
They're stamped with a code that gives the identification of the manufacturer and the actual ingredients that go into the mix to make the steel for the pipe, the date that the pipe was made, and the location. And that is recorded as the pipeline is laid in the ditch.
And also the
So
welder's number too.
so there is a very precise record of what went on. But PIMSA realizes that there is a financial burden here for Enbridge. And they required, and I don't know what the percentage was, but they required a percentage of these pieces to be dug up and inspected. And from that percentage, they statistically drew a estimate of the rate of failure for the rest of the pipeline for a given period of years. Now Enbridge is charged with going back, and I think they're supposed to go back and start reassessing in 2016. And I'm not sure of that date, that it sticks in the back of my head. But that's how the whole thing works. It's not a matter that the whole line is gonna get dug up and they're gonna go and do an x-ray on every well. That ain't gonna happen.
Actually, I have the report, the official report on the 2007 spill in Owen, and they evaluated what happened. It said, radiographic technicians inspecting each girth weld during pipeline construction in 1998 identified defects in a number of ERW longitudinal seams adjacent to the girth welds. The defects were identified as lack of fusion. 20 lengths of pipe that contained such defects were removed from the pipeline for further analysis. 11 of the 20 lengths removed were determined to contain significant weld defects on the inside diameter of the pipe and were sent to a metallurgical consultant for further evaluation. The consultant determined that 7 of the lengths of pipe contained defects that would be rejected, blah, blah, at the time of manufacture. The evaluation performed by the third-party specialist of these 7 defects determined that 3 of the defects would survive at least 20 years. 1 was large enough to fail during a post-construction hydrostatic test to 1918 psi or 95% of the whatever, so on. And 3 would be expected to grow to failure in some time shorter than 20 years. It was all a statistical analysis that ultimately didn't mean a lot.
Well, that's because they say once,
Again,
and then
it's
see.
not-
Yeah, they're talking about
The manufacturing
seal that where it was
So
welded
they
at the
missed-
manufacturing
Right.
plant.
Right.
But those are part of the, those aren't part of the x-ray then?
No,
No, typically, the x-rays, they
That's what
x-ray
you're
part
doing.
well, yeah.
Right.
You're well.
But not the manufacturer.
no,
Not that
seams.
deep.
no, that's all supposed to be taken care of at the
I
manufacturing.
noticed you said supposed to be.
Yeah.
Who regulates that?
Right. Who does regulate that?
I don't know, but we got too much regulation, you know that.
Well, the other question I had, you talked about your gas pipeline being at 300 or 400, or maybe 700. I guess these are supposed to be jacked up to 1,200 pounds per square inch. And I know
14.
1,400?
Yeah.
Well, I talked to them today, they said 1,200, but
They're-
I know in my house I got water pressure 30 to 50, and I've had about 4 leaks in the past 2 years. But I'm just wondering, putting that kind of pressure on forever, just
You gotta get
seems,
that new hose that shrinks up. That's-
but it's a mind-boggling pressure, and just to consider that being on forever, just seems, how can you not have some failure, which brings me to one of the myths that they claim myth. This expansion puts a number of Wisconsin bodies at risk. Well, certainly they're all at risk. I mean, to say that's a myth, and then not explain, maybe if the risk is infinitesimal, that would be one thing, but they really don't talk in terms of what is the risk. They just put it out bold that it's a myth, and something made by men, put together by women, and under 1,200 pounds of pressure.
And then increase the pressure. Right,
That
it wasn't
1,200
built
pounds of
for.
pressure is something that hard to say that's going to be flawless for 60 years or 100 years or whatever.
Actually, it's kind of
The original permits were, for Lot 61 were let for that high pressure. That's a misconception that a lot of people have. Originally, they ran about 400 PSI. And the permit itself was let, and the pipe was spec'd for this 1,400 that they're talking about. And by the way, the spill that occurred in Grand Marsh, which was not on line 61, that was on the line that was put in prior to that, but they were running 1,387 PSI.
But it was a crude line,
at that
like running
time,
through
at that
Walworth.
time.
Yeah.
PIMSA requested Enbridge's pumping charts, and they were actually running that pressure at that point in time. So they've done a bunch of this prior to this ramp up on line 61.
I've had quite a few flats in my tires lately, and I suppose the fact that it's 1/1,000,000th of the surface area of my pipes at my house or my tire, doesn't matter that 1,200 pounds finds that little piece. I mean, that's
how
so
pressure
you really
works.
can't use common, analysis or saying something's 99.9999. It's like, okay, you got a leak in your tire or a leak in your pipe, you got a problem. Pressure finds that infinitesimally small
Yeah.
defects.
And ask the folks in Kalamazoo, they have to dredge, they've been dredging again this summer, 4 years later, because everything sinks.
Yeah.
And so they've dredged, and it's kind of like you can swim at your own risk, but they're redredging again, and they do not feel confident that they're gonna get it all, because they can't.
With listening to all these technical terms, what boggles my mind is that this is going from Canada to Louisiana, and we're not getting any benefit. We're
Right.
taking all the risk,
Right, right.
And they're making all the
and
money.
they're making all the money. What else is
There are moves on the part of the Ojibwe tribes in Minnesota, and I believe in Douglas County now too, in that they're coming across with that sandpiper line, that we'll see more of activism from the Native American
Yeah.
element.
And that's going on in the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota. Their, the XL pipeline, their permit expired, so they have to start again. It's about a 1.5-year process. But I have friends that have laid down in front of bulldozers, and because, you know, water treaty rights and things like that, and water is life for natives, it should be for us too, but it is for them. And so they're just like, no, we're not gonna do this. So it's very interesting. I've learned a lot this summer about this, but where I had zero knowledge before, now I have maybe 11 out of 100 points, but I'm doing a lot of reading every day.
And I happen to live within 1/4 mile of the Enbridge pipelines. And I knew they were there. I lived there when they put them in. Didn't know that they had oil, or I thought they were just natural gas, and you know, that's everywhere. But once a year, and really I never paid any attention to it, God's honest truth, I get a pamphlet in the mail once a year. We get a pamphlet, and it's from Enbridge, but I didn't know Enbridge from anything. Could have been a gas company, could have been water for all I knew. But it said, if you hear hissing, if you smell an odor, and some other strange things like that. And I said, oh yeah, if I do, I'm running. But that's the only thing, and it's just a little pamphlet, you know, and it went right in the.
Pass it around, you want to look at it?
No, mine's different than that.
Yeah,
It's
but
even smaller,
well,
and
it's
you know,
maybe older.
but I just kept throwing it in the garbage. Really, because I thought, oh yeah, you know, she could do that in one spark, and because I thought it was natural gas. Because I don't know what crude oil smells like, but it said, I do believe it says rotten eggs on
And
it.
the sulfur.
I don't know. I've
But
no
what are we
idea.
gonna do?
The reason you got a rotten egg smell with the, especially with the dilbit,
Okay,
is hydrogen sulfide is added to the mix.
okay.
Ah,
But it says if you smell rotten eggs,
Hold your breath. It's
no, it's got a number to call.
It's poisonous.
It's got a number to call.
Is that put in for the smell, for the detection
No,
purposes?
that's
or
something,
else?
something entirely different that's put into natural gas. The hydrogen sulfide that they put into the diluted bitumen is actually, it causes to be more liquidous, reduces viscosity.
And the pipelines by our house had to be put in about '07.
One was.
One was,
The other one is real old.
yeah.
I think they're 98 and 60, something, 60.
That would sound about right. Another thing, we don't know what the pressures are on those lines, or the volume that is pumped through them a day.
Can I answer the latest question about taxes? The latest tax data for Walworth County is the average tax in the county is $3,427. And it's the 9th highest tax rate in the state of Wisconsin and 129th in the U.S. Now,
really?
now there must be 2,000 counties in the, 2,500 maybe counties in the U.S. You're 129. Well, let me just, you can check that data to make sure. And I'm not one who argues about taxes. I don't mind paying taxes if I get something for it.
Right.
But going back to the fact that they pay nothing, I mean, this is a private transportation highway that you're not getting anything for. And if you figure out at 400,000 barrels per day, and you translate that into gallons, and you say, okay, what happens if we get, this is the state of Wisconsin, gets 10 cents a gallon. That's $620 million a year. Now, you know, if you even divide that by 72, you know, this county could get a lot of money. Potentially. Now, this is blue skying. I don't think this is going to happen. But on the other hand, this is what you're not getting. And if you charge a penny a gallon, it's actually 62 million a year for the state. That's at 400,000 barrels per day traveling through. That's not 1.2 million. So, you know, again, I'm not making a pitch for or against taxes. Again, I don't mind paying taxes, but the Enbridge is paying zilch.
That's
For
part of
your-
our, that's part of our frustration, is the thousands of people that are worried about property taxes, rightfully so, don't come to meetings like this to learn that their property taxes are high because corporations, many like Enbridge, don't pay their fair share. So we're stuck picking up and paying for more. That's not right. But how do you get the rest of the public interested in that? Because, you know, people hear taxes and they don't care.
Couple of points. I think we need to find a way to draw all this valuable information together and create some kind of an action plan. But we've worked together, those of us in the county, with mineral extraction, the rock quarries, sand quarries around the county, and we have a lot of them. And our big concern has been not only the extraction process, but the restoration process. And we found with Ammon going under here this past year, that some of them, we've had good bonding to cover those situations. So maybe the question to find some level of conclusion here is, yeah, we'd like some taxes, but maybe we should look for the assurance of bonding so that if you got a problem here, there, or everywhere, you've got that umbrella coverage to start taking care of that.
Right.
I don't think that would be an unreasonable thing to ask for. They're in business. I mean, I'm in business. I got to have insurance.
Oh, teachers, I have, sure, absolutely. I think one of the lines in the letter that Charlene got, and again, I think Enbridge is spending a lot of time on Little Walworth County. You know, they've talked to Dan, they've written to Charlene, they've called.
Well, the letter that I got, and everybody got a copy of, all the supervisors got it.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's a lot of, but I think, wasn't there a sentence toward the end saying that public meeting, or we'd like to come to your meeting? Wasn't there something?
Well, they are offering to get
Yeah,
together
okay.
at the Cambridge.
Why do they offer the general thing?
They offered, yeah, there was talk of a.
Why don't they come
They're
here?
in general thing.
Why don't they come here and talk to your board?
They'd
Our board.
rather have us at their territory, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, they want to give you a tour of one of the pumping stations.
Right. But
You better hire your own engineers and your own lawyers. Because, you know, if Enbridge comes in, they'll just overwhelm you with, you know, they got this data, they got that data, and this pipe does that, and then they'll do a pirouette and a double somersault, and you'll all be wowed.
Well,
Just
they
got
got
a little-
assessment and the, you know, just the terms, assessment and statement would have me gone.
But Jefferson County meeting
I would think they
had
would say.
Enbridge doing pirouettes and backhand springs, and so I think this is what we're trying to do, is the more educated we are, the more knowledgeable, the more informed we are, that when we have that opportunity to talk, we can ask good questions instead of just like,
oh, is this a good thing?
you know?
Yeah,
We think, so well, what about
absolutely.
this? And so I think this is the beauty of this, and every meeting we have, we get more people, we get different people. And so we need to talk to people, and we need to share on Facebook, or talk, and not scary stuff, but just, do you know? And the thing that you don't know, and we want to know.
One of the things that concerns me is the abrasiveness of the tar sands on the
Yeah.
pipe.
Mhm.
And
Brand claims it's not.
does anybody ever address that?
That's a great-
Enbridge has. Please finish what you were going to say, and
Go
I'll
ahead.
answer you. But
Go ahead.
it's going to take me a minute to get to you, but bear with me here. Ellen is speaking about having Enbridge come and meet with us, and I've been party to 3 meetings that Enbridge was not directly invited to, but showed up for. One of the first experience that I had was that I was involved in sponsoring a resolution similar to what Walworth County is considering here in Wood County. And typically it goes through a committee first. And from there, it goes to the whole county board for consideration. Well, the committee had passed it out and had given a yay on this resolution. And it was due then to be considered by the full board. And I went to that meeting to speak for and about the resolution to the board. I walked in the room, and the chairman of the committee that had developed the resolution said, "Come with me. We're having a meeting in this room right here, and you need to be there." I walked in the room, and here was one of the representatives of Enbridge, and here are all the members of the committee. I hadn't been informed of this. This was 10 minutes prior to the county Board of Supervisors' full meeting. And they had me sit down, and they said, "We've been asked to reconsider our motion to pass this resolution." And they gave the representatives from Enbridge 5 minutes to speak. This is after they've already passed this resolution now. And then they gave me 5 minutes to speak. It turned out in favor of the resolution. They voted unanimously to support what they'd already done, and the motion moved on then to the county, and it was supported. The part about the, talking about the, how do I want to put it? Dave had to say about making the company Enbridge responsible for what they do is alluded to in the resolution that Wood County put in. And I'll try to get you a copy of that, Charlene, so that if you might want to change your resolution, you could at least model it. But at any rate, it's a matter that Enbridge, their people really aren't that well versed in what they do. I've been to 2 other meetings, and there were 2 other representatives, and they weren't very well up on the facts on their situation.
They're almost like sales reps versus like technical people?
PR people?
One was a PR, and the other one was an engineer. The engineer really didn't know anything.
But he couldn't have answered the question about the corrosiveness or?
No.
No, they say, "We'll get back to you," and then they don't get back.
That's the stock
That's
answer.
the stock answer.
He wouldn't even admit that benzene was toxic.
Oh, gee. The beauty of smartphones. What about? Well, I know I would be very excited to go to a meeting with Enbridge people there for a discussion, not an attack.
Yeah.
It's my very best management. I've got a lot of questions about a lot of different things, and we can't answer those. We can speculate, we can get mad, we can shake our fists, but until we have someone come and actually, from the company, and again, they could just tell us a bunch of lies and leave, and we'll know that. But it's hard to solve the problem, but I think they're not counting on us being well-versed, and I think they're looking at that as being very unexpected, starting in Jefferson County and moving on down with us. Mary?
Well, and if any of you saw my letter to the editor of the Gazette on Sunday, time is of the essence here. I mean, the county board in Walworth is not meeting in August, so if they're going to be taking it up in September, citizens really need to reach out to their county board supervisor and make sure that they're, they hear them before they either have one of these sidebar conversations with an Enbridge representative or the county board, votes on it, or tables it just like they did with the shingles issue. So,
Is that legal to do that? To have like a closed, like an Enbridge person meet with a board?
Yeah, well, not the whole board.
Your name is Mary.
Okay, but.
I saw your
but they've
article,
already
that's
talked.
why I made it.
oh, good. Good.
You can't do a meeting that's closed to the public.
The door was left open.
But it's not advertised, it's not advertised, it's.
Well, it wasn't, not the same room, that is.
Oh, it gets kind of difficult. I was looking online today, they talked about does the dilbit float? And they said, yeah, it doesn't sink, and they cited some test, which I guess was by putting it in a tank with nothing else in it, well, that floated. They said, but if you look at Kalamazoo, it's sunk because it's out in nature, and if you have other sediments or organic materials, it's heavier than other stuff, so it's not floating real. I mean, cement boats will float, but they probably sink a little faster than plastic ones.
Right.
If you put something in it. So that's kind of but you get these kind of misdirections that make it kind of difficult, which is a little bit troubling because you'd want to hear the truth, which is probably, as they say, all oil will sink once it gets enough stuff to it, but does this stuff sink quicker? And does it sink if it's not in the lab usually?
Right.
But you don't get that, you just get, nope, there was a experiment done and it floats. So I don't, I looked at it for 10 minutes, so I can't necessarily refute everything. Maybe it's not that sinkable. I don't know, just we dog us and sunk and count.
So if you'll kind of keep your eye open, news, press releases, talk to friends, my guess is we'll wait a little bit. Possibly we'll do another, another session like this, or if we can get an Enbridge person, that would be amazing. Just a real recap before we convene here, I wish, and Dan was at that Jefferson meeting with Enbridge there, and they, advertised they had cookies, and they didn't want this, they wanted to kind of isolate people, and here, have a cookie, and let's talk one-on-one, and an older woman came for a forum, and she saw some chairs in the corner and started setting up chairs, and then someone started to help her, and then they all sat down and looked at the Enbridge guy and voted, and do we want cookies or do we want a forum? We want a forum. Who wants a forum? Raise your hand. They just looked at the guy. And again, they're in that divide and conquer thing, but I would love to meet that woman because I want to meet that woman. I just thought it was so great because a person got that whole idea about that democracy being participatory instead of just saying,
That was
"Okay,
Ronnie
don't worry
Monroe.
about it."
That's Ronnie Monroe, I think.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I got to meet her
Yeah.
because that was awesome. So we appreciate you coming. Ann, please.
I know it's late, I just want real quick.
No, please.
They applied for a permit to do this expansion. Where are we in the process in terms of the DNR and the state, et cetera?
The DNR
Has it been
passed-
approved or not?
passed the permit.
Well, I think it's the
Air permit.
The air permit.
we had that 21-day period to respond, and then I'm pretty sure that the DNR approved.
It was.
So
The air.
so
Nothing inside the pipes, just.
what you're doing with the resolutions is symbolic, but don't think that symbolism is not important, because it really is, because it just the educational value of letting people know there will be another spill.
Yes.
The people in this room will know what to do. I mean, you might not know step 1, 2, 3, 4, but you'll know that this is a risk that's finally fallen down on our heads, and that we need to take action. So.
Can I just say, I don't know that we'll know what to do. And I'm
Well-
not sure that our emergency workers in our city or in our county or in our state will know what to do. And Enbridge says, I love this, along with communities and neighbors near our pipelines, the last thing Enbridge wants is a pipeline release. A pipeline release And do we know what to do about a pipeline release in Delavan, Wisconsin? I don't think so.
Run.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
I mean,
Call
I think
call
it's-
Lieutenant John Ennis in Elkhorn.
Mhm.
He's the county, the
Emergency.
Walworth County Emergency Manager.
If you don't
And
like
he'll tell you the Enbridge line, you know, he's got the Enbridge pamphlet there, and he'll say, well, safety first, we're doing this, we're doing that,
Right.
but what kind of training, you brought up about the EMTs,
I can answer.
and how about, do they know how to handle hexane, and benzene? And, you know, these are not kind of ordinary things that you learn in EMT school or, you know, when you're re-upped. So anyway, yes.
And, Bruce, I have to share another reason why this so hit close to my home, to my heart, is I was an EMT for 12 years, and I lived through a fertilizer fire in Darien that we had to evacuate half of the village of Darien and a trailer park and all sorts of things because of the fumes and the way the wind was blowing. I was an EMT during the LP fire down in Williams Bay when somebody ran into the, Walworth, Williams Bay, Walworth. And we had to evacuate a good share of Walworth. So I've been there, and thank God nothing god awful happened, but it was two situations that could have been extremely bad. So I've lived through that fear, and I just want to I want to have my county prepared as well as possible, protected as well as possible, and have as much knowledge as we can have.
And excuse me, Mary, the 1, 2, 3, 4 is what Lieutenant John Ennis should tell you. I mean, it's not your responsibility, except maybe to remind him that you need to have this plan in case this happens in the county to protect our EMTs and our ordinary citizens and children in schools and the wetlands and whatever.
But a plan on paper and a plan in a brochure, and I mean, when I think about what our EMTs do or what, you know, in this county, the practice that they do in order to respond to the possibilities, and I want to know that this possibility is a part of how that response happens, and I don't think it does. I know a lot of people on, you know,
Well, that's what
that
you
work
need
in
to,
those
you need to
capacities.
remind this gentleman that, you know, something needs to be done.
The first call I made up in Clark County after trying to get hold of Enbridge was to the county emergency services manager. And he didn't know anything. He knew nothing about the Enbridge pipeline expansion. He knew nothing, absolutely nothing. And when I went in and interviewed him a few days later, he still knew nothing. So the first time I ever heard about it was when you called me. I called the county zoning administrator, and we talked for 15 minutes before it dawned on me that we were talking about two different pipelines. He knew nothing about the Enbridge pipeline. I talked to the administrator of our local fire department, local volunteer fire department. He knew everything. He did, not really, but.
Okay, I was like, really?
But he knew that Enbridge every year donates $1,000, $1,500 to the fire department out of their safe community fund, so they can get, I think this year it was a new artificial electronic defibrillator, a new AED. Year before it was maybe helmets, year before maybe firefighter backpacks.
Which is nice, yeah.
This year they got the $1,500, and Enbridge went in also a week or so after that and donated $1,000 to the police department for more equipment. I mean, these are like, and they're grateful. And the fire department people go once a year to someplace in Eau Claire for pipeline training.
Here's the first
What
step.
that means, I don't know.
First step,
Tomorrow,
run like it.
Lieutenant John Ennis, 262
Got it.
741 4616. 262 741 4616. And you know, if you get 50 people, they call and ask the same question, they're gonna kind of get the hint that maybe people, you know, they know what's going on out here, and that maybe I ought to get on the stick. Maybe not, but you got a better chance if you say something.
You might want to ask him if he is aware or if his department has trained any number of individuals for hazmat. I'm a hazmat certified participator, and it took me a full week of 8-hour days of training to qualify for my card. And that's a uniform and a whole set of laws and regulations that you need to know and abide by when you go into a chemical spill, the likes of which will occur with the diluent and the crude itself.
Hazmat is hazardous materials, I think.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
But you have to be practical and realize we can't be all things to all people. So what we do is our county has mutual aid agreements with Rock, Kenosha, Racine, Milwaukee. And when we've had, the last one I can think of, was the tornado that went through here about 4 years ago? Yeah, on Trevor and over on the east end of the county. We had very fast, quick response. Now, it's not the same subject, but it kind of sort of is. There are resources out there that communities have and can afford or probably subsidized by the federal government. And those folks are usually very willing to come and present their expertise. But that doesn't substitute the fact that we just need to be aware. This is a serious subject. We need to take that component of it and start to educate ourselves on the coulda, woulda, shoulda type situation.
And my comments really are not, this is sort of similar to the, your welds are gonna hold, but that other weld may not. Our county emergency responders are excellent in our county from my perspective, but I think that this is unique, and I think that, if you talk to any number of people in this population, they have no idea
That's the problem.
what this is about.
That's the real problem.
I didn't, and I've been here for 40 years. I've been, I had no idea, and so I'm more concerned about the awareness and in a critical perspective, and certainly not of the possibility that our county could take care of us. I think that it could, but education and training and knowing these things before the pipeline release may occur would make me feel far more comfortable about living where I live.
So it's been a very heavy evening, thinking about a lot of stuff. So I think we need to end on a lighter note. We need to sing happy birthday first.
All right.
And if I knew my daughter was home, we would dial her number, we could sing to her too, but I'm sure she's out and about and doing fun things. So what we will, is we have Bruce there, so let's sing. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to